Deep past the last farmlands of the kingdom, where the paths forgot to be paths, stood a forest the elders never spoke of after dark. They called it Ohianso, the forbidden wood, and even the bravest hunters would circle 3 villages out of their way rather than let its shadow touch their skin. It was said the spirits there did not forgive trespassers. It was said other things too. One night, a woman ran into that forest, not brave, only broken. For 11 years, the village had called her barren, spat the word at her like a curse dressed as truth, until the shame grew too heavy to carry inside her own home a moment longer. So she ran, past the tree line everyone feared, past the whispers that something ancient watched from within, and fell to her knees before the oldest tree at its heart. She begged, not for wealth, not for power, only for a child to call her own. And deep in the roots of that forgotten forest, something old, older than the kingdom, older than its throne, older than fear itself, finally stirred to answer her. 9 moons later, she gave birth to a girl with hair the color of moonlight, silver white and shimmering, unlike anything the village had ever seen. They called the child cursed. They did not yet know what she truly was. For as she grew, she began to hear voices no one else could hear, voices rising from bark and root and leaf, ancient secrets of the earth, whispered directly into her blood. The trees had not simply answered a mother's prayer that night. They had chosen a keeper. And somewhere deep in that forest, the spirits were still watching, still waiting patiently for the day the rest of the kingdom would finally understand what they had known since before she ever drew breath. She was never cursed, she was chosen. The sun did not rise gently over the outskirts of the kingdom. It rose like a judgment, beating down on rooftops made of mud and thatch, where the lowest of the low were made to live. Obinna had been sweeping the dust from outside his hut since before the birds woke, though the wind would only undo his work by midday. Still, he swept. A neighbor named Okafor passed by, as he often did, pausing just long enough to plant a small cruelty.
Whose yard is this really, Obinna? I'll keep it well. You have no child to inherit dust.
He walked off laughing. Inside the hut, Ngozi had heard every word through the thin walls, as she heard nearly everything the village whispered about her. She pressed her hand to her belly, empty, still, after 11 years of marriage. When Obinna came inside, he found her sitting very still.
Don't listen to him.
I've stopped listening to the words.
We have each other.
And nothing else. I'm tired, Obinna.
He said nothing for a long moment, only holding her hand, unsure what comfort he could truly offer against 11 years of accumulated grief. Neither of them noticed how the wind outside had gone suddenly, deliberately still, as though something far away were listening closely, waiting for what was still to come. The insults did not come all at once that day. They came in pieces, the way water wears down stone, small, constant, until an ache became unbearable. Ngozi gathered her basket.
I only need pepper and salt. I'll be quick.
At the market, an old trader's wife blocked her path with a knowing smirk.
11 years married, and still no child, Ngozi? Some women are simply not favored by the gods.
Ngozi said nothing. She paid for her pepper with trembling hands and left quickly, her chest tight with old familiar shame. She told herself the stream would be quieter. It was not. A young woman at the stream, laughing, not troubling to lower her voice.
11 years. And her husband still hasn't put her aside. He must love her greatly. Or pity her greatly.
Ngozi filled her pot in silence, eyes burning, and walked home slower than she had ever walked in her life. Obinna was still out at the farm that evening, the fields keeping him later than usual. Ngozi sat alone in the hut as night fell, replaying every smutting face, every whispered word, until the walls of her home felt too small to hold the grief inside her. By the time the village slept, something in her had quietly broken. Ngozi whispered to no one, "I cannot carry this one more day." She did not decide to go. Her feet simply carried her, past the edge of their yard, past the last farmland, toward the tree line everyone in the village feared, and no one dared enter after dark. She did not stop to consider the danger. 11 years of shame had made her fearless in the one way that mattered. She no longer feared losing anything because she already felt she had nothing left to lose. She walked until the ordinary trees gave way to older, twisted ones, their bark carved by time into shapes that resembled solemn faces. She walked until she reached a small clearing where one massive Iroko tree stood apart from all the others, its bark split faintly at the base, weeping a slow trickle of golden sap that glowed softly from within. She fell to her knees before it, sobbing openly for the first time in years. "Spirits of this forest, gods of my mothers before me, I do not come to take, I come to beg. 11 years I have prayed in empty rooms to empty air. Just once, let me be heard by something that is not empty." The clearing held its breath around her. "I do not ask for wealth. I do not ask for power. I ask only for a child to love, to raise well, to live better than this world has left me." Then, so softly she would question for years afterward whether she had imagined it, the golden sap pulsed once, like a heartbeat, and a voice, ancient and layered like many voices speaking as one, whispered directly into the marrow of her bones. "A child you shall have, daughter of sorrow. But she will not belong only to you. She will belong to the roots, and the roots do not release easily what they claim." Ngozi gasped, "I don't understand." But the wind had already stilled. The forest had gone silent and ordinary again, as though it had never spoken at all. Meanwhile, Obinna had returned home to an empty hut. "Ngozi," he called into the dark. "Ngozi." He searched the compound first, then the neighbors' yards, his voice rising with every unanswered call. By the time he reached the edge of the village, real fear had taken hold of him, fear sharper than any mockery Okafor had ever thrown at his door. "Ngozi, have you seen my wife?" "Neighbor, not since evening, Obinna. You don't think—" He did not wait to hear the rest. He ran toward the one place a heartbroken woman, driven past her limit, might go, the one place every sane person in the village had spent a lifetime avoiding. He reached the tree line just as the sky began to lighten, and there, stepping unsteadily out from beneath the ancient canopy, was Ngozi, pale, trembling, tears dried on her face, but alive.
Ngozi, Ngozi, thank the gods.
Obinna,
Do you know what could have happened to you?
I couldn't carry it anymore. The shame.
He held her then so tightly, it was as though he feared she might vanish if he let go. Relief and terror tangled together in his chest.
Never again. Whatever burden you carry it with me.
Not alone. I think something answered me, Obinna.
He said nothing to that, only took her hand and led her gently home, neither of them noticing the single golden leaf that had drifted down and settled, unburnt and faintly glowing, into her wrapper. 9 months later, Ngozi's screams tore through the quiet of their small hut, and by the time the dibia arrived, it was already too late to fetch anyone else. Obinna paced outside, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. Then, finally, a cry, small, sharp, furious with life. "Obinna? Is it? Is she?" The dibia slowly. "A girl. A healthy girl." But when Ngozi finally held her, both parents fell silent. The child's hair, thick, soft, undeniably real, shimmered pure silver white, as if moonlight itself had been spun into strands.
What is this?
I've never seen anything like this before. It is beyond anything I can explain.
She's my child. She's mine.
By the next morning, half the outskirts had gathered outside their hut, whispering. A curse, another. She went into the forbidden wood alone some nights back. Everyone whispered of it. What did she bring back with her?
I told you no good comes from that place. An innocent child, have you no shame? You should be ashamed letting your wife wander into a cursed forest, and now look what she's brought home.
Obinna's jaw tightened, but he said nothing further, choosing instead to return inside to his wife and daughter rather than feed the crowd's hunger for spectacle. Inside, Ngozi paid the noise no mind. She sat cradling her daughter, tracing a gentle finger along one silver strand, humming softly. Ngozi, whispering, I don't know what you are, or what waits for you out there, but I know what I prayed for. I prayed for someone to love. Your name is Amara, Grace. Because whatever the village called her, Ngozi had already decided what her daughter's name would truly mean.
Enjoying the story? Don't forget to subscribe to Folktales with Oni for more amazing African stories. Thanks for your support. Now, let's continue.
By the time Amara could walk, the whispers had calcified into roar. Keep your children away from that one. Don't let her touch your water pot. Amara grew up understanding loneliness before she understood letters or numbers. One afternoon, she approached a group of girls weaving grass dolls near the well.
Can I play too? My mother said the curse will jump onto me if I play with you. I'm not cursed. I'm just me. Then why is your hair like that? Nobody else has hair like moonlight.
Amara had no answer. She wandered home slower than she'd wandered out.
They won't play with me, Mom.
Their fear says nothing. It says everything about how small the world can make when it fears what it doesn't understand.
Will it always be like this?
I don't know. But you were prayed for. You were wanted. Don't let any unkind child make you forget that.
That night, restless, she slipped out to the edge of their yard, where the ground sloped toward the tall, dark line of ancient trees. Hello? The leaves rustled once, gently, though there was no wind at all. Amara smiled for the first time that whole day, and did not yet understand why. She was 9 the first time the trees answered back. It happened slowly, the rustling that always responded to her presence, the strange, warm feeling of being watched, not with malice, but with curiosity. One afternoon, she wandered further than ever before, until she stood before the great Iroko at the heart of a clearing, its bark weeping the same golden sap her mother had once knelt beneath. You're the one who watches me. I know it's you. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the sap pulsed once, and a voice, ancient, layered, rumbled up through the trunk into her palm. You have your mother's courage and your father's patience. Both will serve you well, silver-haired daughter. You can't talk? We have always spoken. Few have ever listened. Why me? Because you were promised to us before you were born. Not as a prisoner, as a keeper. There is old knowledge sleeping in these roots, knowledge the world has forgotten how to hear. We waited for someone who still remembers how to listen. Tears slipped down her cheeks. They call me cursed out there. Let them call you what fear needs. We will call you what you truly are. What's that? Beloved. The trees taught her slowly which leaves eased fever, which roots stopped bleeding, and which bark calmed a shaking chest. This one, for the sickness that burns from within, steep it slowly, never let it boil hard. And this? Patience. It heals wounds that refuse to close. Her first real test came when Nneka's foot became badly infected after a deep cut, swelling until she could barely stand.
Are you certain, Ngozi? She's only a child. She's my daughter. I trust her more than I trust my own fear.
Rest it. Change the wrap each morning. It will heal within the week.
Thank you, my child.
By the 7th day, Nneka walked without pain.
How did you know what to do, child?
I listen to things most people have stopped listening to.
Words spread quietly, a whisper here, a cautious retelling there. Some still crossed the road to avoid her. Others began leaving small gifts at her door, silent thanks they were too shy to speak aloud. You're becoming something this whole kingdom will need. I only hope they need me more than they fear me. By the time Amara reached 18 years, her name had begun traveling further than her feet ever had. The first true miracle came with Chukwuemeka, a young hunter bitten by a viper deep in the bush, carried home grey-faced and barely breathing, his legs swollen black around the wound, while the village dibia already murmured the quiet words used to prepare a grieving family. Amara knelt beside him without waiting for permission.
If you fail, girl, you'll be blamed, not praised.
Then I accept that. If I do nothing, he dies regardless.
Ignoring his mother's warning that failure would bring blame rather than gratitude, insisting simply that doing nothing guaranteed his death regardless. She worked through the night with a poultice of crushed bitterleaf root paired with a slow-brewed tea meant to draw the poison outward. By dawn, the swelling had impossibly begun to recede. By the following sunset, Chukwuemeka sat upright, weak but unmistakably alive. Then came Obiajulu, shunned for years over the pale, spreading patches of leprosy that had cost him his place at the village fire. Amara treated him for moons, unafraid to touch what others refused to, using a slow back tonic the trees called the mender of the forgotten. Inch by inch, his ruined skin healed whole again. Then came Ifeoma, a young woman born entirely blind, who had never once seen her own mother's face. Amara treated her eyes for a full turning of the moon, using drops made from a rare glowing sap flower deep within the clearing, a gift the trees rarely allowed taking. The morning Ifeoma's eyes finally opened to true light, her scream of shock dissolved almost instantly into sobbing, disbelieving laughter at the impossible blueness of the sky above her. Word of these miracles could no longer travel quietly. It spread like Hamatan fire from village to village until people began arriving from well beyond the outskirts entirely, seeking the healer girl with hair like moonlight. Not everyone rejoiced. An old man muttered darkly near the market one evening that a child should never hold this much power, and that such unnatural gifts always carried some price still waiting to be paid. Okafor, older now but no gentler, eagerly agreed, insisting he had warned everyone since her birth that nothing good could come from that forest, and that her gift would eventually reveal its true rotten root.
I said it the day she was born. A child shouldn't hold this much power. There's always a price waiting to be paid. Nothing good comes from that forest.
Amara, passing by with her herb pouch slung over one shoulder, heard every word, though she had long since learned not to let it show on her face. That night, kneeling before the great Iroko, she finally allowed the tears to fall freely, confessing that even as she healed them, some still feared her more than they thanked her. The ancient tree's voice rumbled low with something like sorrow, reminding her that fear rarely paused to ask whether it was deserved before it took root, but that every hand she saved would carry her name forward long after every hateful tongue eventually fell silent. She had no way of knowing, kneeling there in the moonlit clearing, that the wickedest ears in the entire kingdom had already begun to hear her name and were already deciding precisely what to do about it. While Amara's name grew gentler with every healing, another name grew heavier with every passing season, spoken not with hope but with dread. Okonkwo, second in command to King Obiora himself, had been given guards, land, and authority meant to protect the kingdom's people. Instead, he wielded all of it like a blade turned inward on the very village he was sworn to serve. He extracted tribute far beyond what the kingdom required, seizing livestock and grain from farmers too frightened to refuse him, framing every act of theft as a lesson in remembering who truly governed the land.
You owe tribute for the water flowing past your land.
My lord, I've already paid what the kingdom requires.
The kingdom requires one tribute. I require another.
His daughter Adaeze watched these cruelties with open delight, once even complaining that her father had shown too much mercy in leaving a farmer his second goat.
Father, you didn't even take his second goat. You're getting soft.
There is time yet, my daughter. Watch and learn.
Adaeze needed very little teaching in cruelty herself. One afternoon, at the village stream, she arrived flanked by her father's guards and demanded the maidens gathering water leave immediately so she might bathe alone.
Everyone leave. I wish to bathe alone. Please, my lady, only a moment more.
Did I stutter? I said leave.
When an elderly woman among them, slower on her feet, failed to finish filling her pot quickly enough, Adaeze ordered the guards to shatter it, laughing brightly as the old woman was soaked in her own spilled water, calling her clumsy as she stepped past without a second glance. Word of such cruelties spread through the village only in hushed, frightened tones, never spoken too loudly nor too near open windows. The elders murmured privately that the king, though a just man, could not see what his own second-in-command carried out in his name, and that Okonkwo's guards were everywhere, his daughter's cruelty compounding his own tenfold. Far across the kingdom, in the comfort of the palace, none of this had yet reached the ears of a young prince who still believed wholeheartedly in the goodness of the people he would one day rule. That innocence was not going to last much longer. Prince Ikenna had been raised differently than most princes. Where other royal children were taught to keep careful distance from commoners, King Obiora had insisted his son walk often among his people, visiting farms, sharing meals with laborers, learning the true weight of the crown he would one day carry. For a king who did not know his people's hunger could rule only their fear, never their hearts. Ikenna took the lesson deeply to heart, known throughout the kingdom not merely for his handsome bearing, but for a rarer, more valuable royal trait, genuine kindness, which made his political betrothal to Adaeze, arranged years earlier to bond the king and his second-in-command, sit like a stone in his chest. One evening, distracted and pushing food around his plate untouched, he confessed to Queen Nneka what he had learned that day.
Adaeze had guards break an old woman's water pot today.
Are you certain?
I heard it from 3 separate villagers. Mother, how am I meant to marry a woman who finds cruelty amusing?
Your betrothal was arranged for the kingdom's stability, Ikenna, not for...
Love? I understand duty. But must duty bind me to someone who terrorizes the people I hope to protect?
He tried more than once, gently and diplomatically, to encourage some flicker of empathy in Adaeze, reminding her that a little kindness might turn the villagers' fear into loyalty instead.
The villagers fear you. A little kindness might turn that fear to loyalty.
Loyalty is for those who need to be loved. Fear works far more efficiently.
They're not tools to manage, Adaeze. They're people.
They're commoners. That's simply how the world is arranged, my prince.
I don't believe we'll ever agree on that.
We don't need to agree. We only need to marry.
Ikenna studied her for a long, quiet moment, searching one final time for some shred of the wife he might have hoped for, and found none. He admitted they would likely never agree on the matter, rising to leave. Adaize, entirely unbothered, called after him that agreement was not unnecessary, only marriage was required. Ikenna left that conversation carrying a private, unspoken dread of the future being built for him, a future he increasingly felt no part of choosing. He had no way of knowing that this very future was about to be interrupted entirely by an illness so strange, so resistant to every remedy the kingdom possessed, that it would eventually lead him to a healer whose name he had never once heard. A healer with hair like moonlight. It began deceptively as nothing more than a slight fever, one the royal physician assured Queen Nneka would pass by morning, as young men often caught chills easily that season.
He'll be fine by morning. Young men catch chills easily this season.
Morning came, and Ikenna could not lift himself from bed. By the third day, his fever had climbed to an alarming heat, his skin slick with sweat, his breathing shallow and labored. By the fifth day, he had stopped speaking in full sentences, murmuring instead in fevered fragments no one could quite follow. King Obiora, his composed authority cracking for the first time anyone could remember, commanded that every healer within 3 days' travel be brought before him, regardless of cost.
Bring every healer within 3 days' travel to the palace. I don't care the cost.
They came, one after the other, each more renowned than the last. Herbalists from neighboring villages, a famed medicine man from beyond the eastern hills, even the strange and unsettling healer Ekweme, arriving with his rattling talismans and yellowed eyes to mutter incantations over the prince's fevered body. None of it worked. If anything, Ikenna only grew worse with each new attempt. The royal physician finally admitted, kneeling with his head bowed low in shame, that he had exhausted every remedy within his knowledge and did not know how to save the prince.
I've tried everything I know, my king. I don't know how to save him.
Queen Nneka wept openly at her son's bedside, smoothing damp hair from her burning forehead, insisting desperately that there must be someone, anyone, left to try. It was Neoma, a young palace maid who rarely spoke above a whisper in the queen's presence, who finally found the courage to step forward.
My queen, forgive me for speaking out of place.
Speak, please.
There's a girl at the outskirts, near the Forbidden Wood.
She healed my mother when the royal physicians had given up. They call her strange, cursed even, for her silver hair. But my lady, I've seen what her hands can do.
What is her name?
Amara, my queen. They call her Amara.
Within the hour, royal guards were dispatched to the outskirts, carrying formal word from the queen herself. Obinna and Ngozi, seeing armored guards approach their humble home, felt old fears of persecution rise fast and sharp within them. But Amara, strangely calm, stepped forward before her parents could speak, telling the guards plainly that she already knew they had come for her. The lead guard, startled by her composure, confirmed only that the prince was dying and that the queen herself had sent for her.
You've come for me.
The prince is dying. The queen herself sends for you.
Take me to him.
Amara turned once more towards the distant tree line, towards the great Iroko she had spoken to 1,000 times, towards the only home that had ever truly accepted her exactly as she was. Then she turned back to the guard, straightened her shoulders, and spoke the words that would carry her for the very first time in her life, beyond everything she had ever known. She would go to him. End of part 1.
We hope you're enjoying the story so far. What did you learn from today's story? Let us know in the comments below. If you haven't already, kindly subscribe to Folktales with Oni and turn on the notification bell so you'll be among the first to know when part 2 is released. In the meantime, our creator would like to say a few words to you.
Hello everyone, my name is Wanko Justice Onyeka Chukwu, the creator of the channel Folktale with Omi. I hope you enjoyed the story so far. We have more amazing stories coming your way. Please subscribe to the channel. And also the story you watched today, the part 2, is coming very soon. In the meantime, there are more amazing stories on the channel. Have a wonderful day everyone. Take care.